for tuning in to the PHNX Coyotes podcast. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a 5-star review. I'm Leah here with Petey and Craig, and we're very excited to be joined by a special guest. Long overdue, it feels like. It's ESPN national NHL writer Greg Wyshysnki. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah. No, I was only out at Mullet once this season, so I couldn't go and hop into wherever you guys are in that facility.
Well, it's hard to find people in Mullet, Greg. So I
know.
You were hiding from us.
I was there. No, but it's good to be here. It should be an interesting offseason, I think, now that we're done with the Cup final.
Absolutely.
Indeed. By the way, you didn't like your promo photo that we used. I thought it brought out your boyish charm. Personally,
I'm just tired of it. It looks like a boy playing dress up in his dad's clothes a little bit. And as Craig knows, like back at Yahoo, I had like the most badass promo photo of all time. It was me in sunglasses and a cigar. So I mean,
yes.
It's like, very much cooler than a poor made for Netflix remake of Big. That is my promo photo now.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, you should definitely resuscitate the Yahoo photo. I agree with you there.
Oh, man.
I think so.
Oh, man. All right. Well, before we get into the offseason that you just mentioned, you did just complete, I guess, a marathon of Stanley Cup final coverage. You were there. So what were your biggest takeaways from this year's Stanley Cup final?
That we were kind of robbed of a good final by injury. Like I followed the Matvei Michkov story from the first round. I covered the Florida-Boston series. I was there for Game 5 when he scored in overtime. I was there in Game 7 when, they shocked the world and beat the Bruins. And then I covered them again in the Eastern Conference final. And, I don't know if they would have ever beaten Vegas if Tkachuk was healthy for Games 4 and 5, but it would have certainly been a more compelling series and a much better story to write to have the Panthers be somewhat closer to full strength than what they ended up being. So it was a bummer. Like I'm happy for Vegas. That's a great story, and an intriguing one. I mean, obviously, like not only being a team that had a 6-year plan to win a cup, but also a team that certainly has a trail of bodies left behind it on the way to the team that they've built now, which I wrote about after the series. But not seeing that Tkachuk story all the way through was a real bummer. The fact that he couldn't even put on his gear in Game 4 and then obviously couldn't answer the bell in Game 5.
What about the postseason as a whole, Greg? There were some complaints that there just weren't enough competitive games. There were a lot of blowouts in this postseason. I don't know what your major takeaways are from the entire Stanley Cup playoff.
It's not so much the games as it is the series. Like, I mean, how many series went 7? Not a lot. Yeah. It was like Boston. It was like the Kraken series with Dallas. It was a couple others, but that was the real issue for me, is that a lot of the series were quick and not competitive. And, we didn't have a lot of drama in a lot of those series either, as far as like, the internal, this guy hit this guy, I said this to this man after the game kind of stuff. We didn't have a lot of that either. We did have some, but I mean, like the postseason as a whole gave us some incredible moments. I mean, the Kraken upsetting the Avalanche, you had the Boston Florida series that was incredible, and like once in a lifetime to see, I guess twice in a lifetime because Tampa lost to Columbus, so twice in a lifetime to see a team like that lose. And then I covered the 4 overtime game between Carolina and Florida, which was, I mean, just not only an incredible game just because it was like I think it ended up being like the 6th longest game in NHL history, but like also like good. It was good hockey. That was the craziest part about it. They played what was basically 2 games that night, or more than 2 games that night, and it ended up being like great hockey all the way through. So there were definitely some highlights, even if you had to kind of give them the postseason demerits for not going and giving us a bunch of Game 7s, and also probably because you didn't have a lot of big markets make it all the way through, which I know is what a lot of people are probably complaining about at the end of the day.
There are these dueling narratives about whether Vegas deserved to win a cup this soon in their existence. We actually created a graphic for the pros and cons, the major points that you hear all the time. You can put this up, but I'm curious for your thoughts on this. There are people who think they were gifted a cup because of course, the expansion draft rules that were in place. What's your take on this whole thing, Greg? I'll just let you talk on this.
Well, I'll take the cons here. First of all, the manipulated the cap. I mean, everybody does that now, so I'm not going to ding them for
Yes.
that. It doesn't suck for established teams because inherently we want that market to be as strong as possible, right? So I think it's great. I think when you look at the West right now, having Vegas be as good as they are is only good for growing the game because you need teams. You need a team out there that other teams play, and then people tune in to watch it, right? The expansion draft being too favorable, I think you can argue that, hey, look at Columbus and Nashville and Ottawa and those teams that took so long to become competitive and how bad it was. But I think it's just the NHL kind of correcting its own mistake by making the rules finally favorable for teams paying to get their way in. And the other thing about that too is, they worked the system. Like they knew how to leverage those rules in a way that no one anticipated. And you think about the 6 guys that are still on that team now and how many of them were landed because of that leverage. Marchessault and Smith, Shea Theodore, William Carrier, William Karlsson. I mean, that was taking on David Clarkson's contract that enabled them to get Karlsson off the Blue Jackets. So, there's a certain amount of jealousy in having a clean cap sheet like you had in the cons and having those revamped expansion rules. But at the end of the day, it's the cunningness of George McPhee that allowed them to use those rules and exert such pressure. And meanwhile, also have other GMs just lose their minds in trying to not be embarrassed by losing something for nothing in the expansion draft that they ended up giving the Golden Knights the foundation for a Stanley Cup champion.
Yeah, and to make a couple further points on this, if you remember back when the expansion draft was held, there wasn't a soul out there that thought Vegas was going to be a playoff team, let alone a cup contender that season. So it's revisionist history in a way to say, well, look, they made the rules. Now, in the final analysis, the rules work well for them, but I also believe it's smart business for the NHL. You mentioned the market. You want it to succeed. But when a guy like Bill Foley is investing that much money and you're trying to win over a new market, why on earth would you tell that market, well, you got to suffer for 5 to 7 years. Your teams are going to be dog shit in spite of the fact that you spent $1 billion.
Right. And even if you didn't spend $1 billion, even back in the day when the entry fee was a lot lower, the idea that you are a new team and trying to get yourself established and like you're trying to build your team based off of fourth liners and third pairing defensemen is insane. And the only reason they did it is because they didn't want the established teams to feel like they were at a competitive disadvantage. And I think maybe it was also at a time when, we expanded so much as a league. Every few years it seemed like they were adding 2 teams versus Vegas being the first expansion team in well over a decade. So, maybe they decided not to punish these teams by having the rules be that dramatic, because then it would have really impacted their rosters. But that being said, I mean, there's no question that Seattle and Vegas are markets that are set up for success in ways that Columbus wasn't.
Greg, we're going to switch gears because the hockey world is now switching from Las Vegas and setting their sights on Nashville and heading to the draft. So there's a couple of big storylines of the draft. We want to get, we live in this Arizona Coyote bubble and we want to get more of a national perspective. And the first thing I want to get your take on is the Matvei Michkov situation. How do you think that story is going to play out over the next week?
Well, I mean, people are freaked out about the amount of time they'll have to wait for him, right? But now all of a sudden the new concern is that, maybe he's kind of telling teams, and I don't want to play for you. I only want to play for, here, and here. And one of the here's is the Washington Capitals, who obviously are going to be in a position to draft him if he drops that low. So there's just a ton of intrigue about him. And maybe, the thing I've been considering is some of these teams and general managers, it doesn't set well when a young player thinks he's got the stroke to basically, orchestrate the draft and position himself to not go to these teams that are drafting ahead of the Capitals. And the hubris of that, you're either impressed by it or you're turned off by it. But I don't know. I think, his ceiling is so high. Everybody I've talked to in the prospects community just loves his game and thinks he could be, a really special player. But the wait time, the Russia situation, and then also apparently his wants and needs as a player to where he wants to play are really 3 factors that are slightly unprecedented, I guess, in recent drafts.
Yeah. On the top end of this draft, was it written in the stars that Chicago was getting Connor Bedard?
It shouldn't have been if it was, man. Like what should have been written in the stars is 15 years of that franchise meandering through an abyss based on what they did, a decade ago. The fact that they won the first overall pick was something we were all dreading because, like, it just disproves karma being real. The fact that they get Bedard now. But the thing about they're going to be successful with Bedard. He's a great player. It's just going to take a little bit longer than people think. I mean, they stripped this thing down to the foundations to be as bad as they could to get him. It worked. But I look at a team like the Ducks, for example, and assuming they draft Adam Fantilli, they're a team that's going to be positioned to succeed well before Chicago is, with the amount of players that are already on the roster, the defensemen that are coming up through the system, and then adding Fantilli to that mix. I think Bedard's going to be good, but it's going to be a little bit, I imagine, before he's that good.
Yeah, it is, and I agree with you too that I grew up in Chicago, as you know, but the Blackhawks did not pay for their sins here, and it's just such a bad look for the league that Connor Bedard is going there. But it'll get swept under the rug very quickly, right? People will forget about it very quickly.
But is it a bad look for the league? The league doesn't care. Like
they don't. Yeah, that's the point.
I was
right?
embarrassed by Bedard, but the league is more than happy that Chicago is going to be relevant again in the next 2 to 3 years. Like they're relevant now, right? As soon as they draft Bedard, they're now Connor Bedard and the Chicago Blackhawks, and you could see how many tickets they sold after they won the lottery in Chicago. I mean, from a league perspective, yeah, they probably would love it if Chicago paid a little bit more for their sins, but ultimately it's a business, and the business is trying to get people to watch your product, and the way you do that is by having really strong, foundational teams that are successful. And the Blackhawks are at the top of that list. The league was making money hand over fist when they were winning cups, and now they're going to be relevant again.
Yep. So on the flip side is the Coyotes, who have had the most horrendous lottery luck ever. They haven't picked in the top 2 ever. And this year, I mean, they didn't drop, but they stuck at 6. Why can't the Coyotes have more luck in the draft lottery?
Man, Red Wings fans listen to this are like, come on, what are you doing?
The historical success. I don't know.
Yeah, no, there's just some teams that does. I mean, and again, I'm a Devils fan, as you guys might know, and they've had ridiculous success in the lottery. Edmonton before that. I mean, Edmonton and Jersey are the reasons they changed the rules of the draft to make sure that you couldn't pick first overall after a certain number of times in a multi-year period. I don't know. It's tough. It's not because it's fixed. I can tell you that. I mean, it was funny to see people talking about it being fixed for Chicago or against Arizona. I'm like, if you think that Gary Bettman had the ability to fix the draft, I guarantee you, based on how long that dude has fought to keep the Coyotes in that market, that they would have gotten a first overall pick by now. And it probably would have been Austin Matthews, right? So it's like the idea that it's somehow the system has worked against the Coyotes, as some people have pointed out. I'm not necessarily buying it based on everything we know about the NHL and its affinity for trying to keep that market strong.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to stick with the Coyotes for a second. Obviously, the saga continues. We're here talking about it daily, but I'm curious from a national perspective what your breakdown, of the situation is. And you actually are in pretty regular contact with the Coyotes, so you've done some coverage of the story. I just want to get your perspective from a national mindset on what's going on here in Arizona.
Yeah, not only do I talk to the Coyotes, but as Craig knows, I've also logged my hours watching Glendale City Council meetings, and I've been doing this story for way too long.
Yep.
I was bummed. I really thought we were at the end of it. I really thought that this arena deal in Tempe was going to be the one that solved the problem, that set the things in motion. I think as I've read sort of the fallout from the vote, it became pretty clear that the opposition was really well organized, and the opposition, was able to hit on a few things that, for whatever reason, resonated with the voters, and that sucks. I mean, all politics are local. I think from a national perspective, I was maybe a bit sunnier on it than it was actually happening on the ground. But now it's become a thing of like, I mean, I talked to the team the night they lost the vote, and they didn't have a plan B, and now there's like 6 plan Bs, and so, I mean, as much as I believe that there were always other irons in the fire, I mean, the bottom line is I think they're scrambling, and hopefully they can find something that keeps them in the market. But I mean, there's no question that this was the biggest swing that the franchise ever took to get something done, and they missed. And hard to recover from that. Hard to recover from that, especially if any of these other alternatives require a public vote. I mean, they've got to be a bit gun shy on that now.
You are out there in the, well, you read a lot. Obviously, you're aware of what's happening in multiple NHL markets. I want to dive into this. I want to spend too much time on this, but long ago when you were doing puck data, you did a different form of aggregation, in my opinion, that I'm seeing today. You always forwarded the story. I'll put it that way. You didn't just report what was out there, and you verified too. You found out if it was actually true before putting it out. I just want to get your sense of the state of things right now in our industry. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I know this bugs a lot of people in this market, fans of this market, because there's a lot of reporting on the Coyotes that is incomplete, suspect, or just downright wrong.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as far as the aggregation goes, it's a premium on speed over context. I mean, the thing we always did at Puck Daddy at Yahoo was it wasn't enough to just kind of like put a link to a story or embed a tweet in a blog post. I mean, the whole point of it was to move it forward. That was the only value that we brought to the table, besides a few jokes and whatever. But like, that was always the mission there, not only for us, but the other Yahoo blogs, was don't just aggregate stuff. Explain it to a general audience, explain it to the people that come to your site every day that are hardcore fans, add context to it, add analysis to it. I mean, I've never found the value of these sites that come up when you do a Google search for a certain subject in hockey, and you click on the thing and it's like, I mean, it may be that AI wrote it. I used to think AI wrote it before AI started actually writing stuff. Now I'm pretty sure AI writes them, because it adds absolutely nothing to the story. And like you said, it kind of, without the context, you're just going to not be able to really tell the story right. And what's the point of that? So in the Coyotes case, there's a lot of inherent bias in the way that the story's been covered for years. I mean, especially from Canadian outlets, they have clear intentions in what they write about the Coyotes in trying to, get that team out of Arizona, get it to a Canadian market. There's also the bias against simply it being in the Southwest. No question about that too. So I don't think there's been a lot of like clear-headed, unbiased reporting on the Coyotes through the years. I think there's been a lot of agenda work on both sides, but mostly on the anti side. And so, you just try to come at it as well as you can, and try to report as accurately as you can, but knowing that also the current regime with the Coyotes, who again, I appreciate them giving me access, I appreciate them giving me time. They are spin masters. like you have to really kind of like have your BS detector on sometimes when you deal with the team, and that's fine. I mean, that's just how it is with a lot of teams. But in the Coyotes case, it's the hockey stuff, and then on top of the hockey stuff, it's also the constant advocacy for the team's success in the market. So you have to kind of be on guard for that, I think.
Greg, you talk about the bias in the Southwest bias. The Hall of Fame class is coming out, and there are a couple of names familiar to Coyotes fans on that list. We talk about Keith Tkachuk and Jeremy Roenick. Do you see, or do you think these guys have a chance to be part of the Hall of Fame class this year?
Well, they're both interesting in the sense they never really won anything, right? And that awards or cups or whatever, like that's always been one of the things that we've talked about with regard to Hall of Fame candidacy. My Hall of Fame approach is much more emphasis on the fame part of it than I think a lot of people have. I've been butting heads with a few people in the stats community about, the worthiness of certain guys versus other guys because of like their stats. And I'm like, Jeremy Roenick was the single most famous American hockey player in the 1990s. Like he just was. And when you have that plus have the goal totals that he put up, I mean, it's hard for me to not look at that guy's legacy at that time and say that he's a Hall of Famer. I think there's way too much kind of like retroactive 2023 looking back at a player and being like, well, he wasn't that good, or he wasn't that famous now. And it's like, well, no, but at the time when he played, you got to understand that like this guy was, Hall of Fame player. Tkachuk's case is interesting because he did win, World Cup gold in '96, Olympic silver. I mean, like, Ronick was there for some of that too, but like, his numbers are really, really impressive. And the numbers of the people, I think it's like every player ahead of him, I think maybe in the goal totals or the point totals, I forget which one it was, is like in the Hall of Fame if they're eligible. And so when you're in that kind of rarefied air, statistically, and other guys like Mark Recchi are getting in, it's hard to make a case against Tkachuk. I think I had him like 10th overall in my, like all of my like predictions for 2023, including the women's players. And I had him ahead of Ronick actually too. So we'll see.
It should be very interesting. I think it comes out right after our show ends.
Yeah, literally
today.
at noon today, Arizona time, as soon as we go off the air. So before we let you go, you wrote a terrific piece on the Coachella Valley Firebirds about a sacrifice that they asked the town to make to give up chocolate because they're playing their Hershey Bears. And of course, Game 7 of that final series is tonight. I encourage people to read that first of all. Go ahead. Sorry. What were you saying?
No, I forgot it was Game 7 tonight. That's exciting.
Yeah. It's a terrific piece. So first of all, like I said, I encourage people to read it. But speaking of chocolate, I asked you to rank your top 5 chocolate bars. I need to know how you arrived at this and what the story is behind this. If it's a childhood story, how you got to your top 5 ranking. Can we put that graphic up, by the way, Jacob? There it is.
Yeah, so number 5 is Hershey's Dark for me, because I wanted to kind of have a representative from the miniatures bag, and that one is my favorite. 100 grams is really, 100 grams just a really, really solid candy bar.
It is.
If I'm down and I need a little bit of a boost, I see it's number 1 on your list. I grab that. Snickers, apparently not a favorite of the panel, but a favorite of mine, and also. Again, like I love peanuts in a chocolate bar. Sometimes I'll buy a Payday or a Baby Ruth or whatever and have those. But I mean, like Snickers is probably the best representation of that. Butterfinger is my favorite chocolate bar of all time. Just love it. Love the taste. Was a fan when I was a kid. Remain a fan today. Get very excited when it's Halloween time and there's little Butterfingers inside of Halloween bags that I can steal for my kid. And then also, and then as I can see here, Kit Kat gets a lot of love here too. Delicious, shareable, but also like you could eat all 4. I like to put a whole Kit Kat in my mouth and like break it with my tongue.
Wow,
that's
impressive.
That is crazy.
I have a large mouth, and also it kind of reminds you of like breaking boards in karate class a little bit. So yeah, Kit Kat's my favorite. I by far, like that's the thing I will pick up most when I'm at like the convenience store if I need a chocolate fix.
See, what Greg did is something that we don't normally do on this show. He actually brought in the concept of sharing and thinking of others. Like it didn't cross my mind once. Like that it could have a shareable candy. Like that's again, we got Greg in for a different perspective. And thus he brought it.
But I need to ask you because do you agree that Kit Kats in Canada taste better than Kit Kats in the US?
I've heard of this about other items. Like I remember people telling me that like you gotta have a Coors Light in Canada because it tastes better than a Coors Light in the US. I'm just like, still Coors Light, man. Kit Kats are fine wherever you get them, I think. I will say though, one thing that you have to watch for that is maybe the apex of the Kit Kat is if you have Japanese grocery stores, they have different flavors of Kit Kat, like exotic flavors, green tea and, other ones. It's really good. We have a few by us that you can buy them as sort of like singles, or you can buy them in a bag, and they're really, really tasty. They get super creative out there.
Awesome.
I did have one wrap question though.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
For Greg, because I know our time is winding down. And we watch you, not only your written story, but your visual word on the drop. And I did have a question for you. What is it like to work with the Canadian media legend and the ESPN icon, Arda Okel?
He's the best. Like Arda and I, our two souls that found each other at ESPN. We kind of knew each other a little bit because we both were at the Score at the same time in Canada too, doing work there when I was at Puck Daddy. And like, he's such an enthusiastic guy. He's one of the hardest workers I've ever seen, and taking as many gigs as he can at ESPN, whether it's hosting The Point or between period stuff or the highlight show at the end of the night. And just like the reason the drop is fun, and thanks for shouting it out, is that we just are both really creative people, and having an outlet at that place where you can just go and throw pies in people's faces, or do a thing of like, how can you describe an NHL, all the NHL teams using references to Star Wars or Taylor Swift, like just nonsense like that is just really fun to do, and to have an outlet for it there on all the social platforms, and also ESPN Plus is just like it's one of my favorite parts of the job. And it's a great crew, and we had a really strong season. I think we'll definitely be back for next year, maybe even in a more expanded way. So it's dope to work with. He's a good dude.
And if you haven't seen the drop, I encourage you to Google for it and look at it, because it's fun, and it's okay to make sports fun. And so appreciate you putting that out there to the universe.
Did you just read that question directly off a text message, by the way?
100% he did. I was looking.
I think you did.
Yeah, well, I might have texted Arda earlier and let him know that was coming, so I might have had to prep that with
He's the best. It's also funny that we are also kind of like, we look the same a little bit. Like we both have like dark hair and like pasty face, and like so. Well, there was a few times when we would put clips of the drop on social or on YouTube, and the comments will inevitably be like, is this a President Zelensky lookalike contest?
That's great.
But really, I mean, it's funny for me because I'm Ukrainian. Maybe not for him because he's Turkish, but also just really funny.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Well, we can't thank you enough for your time. I'm sure we'll see you out in Nashville next week, and next time you're in Arizona, hopefully next season, we'd love to have you in studio. So it was really great talking to you. Thanks so much.
That'd be awesome. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. Awesome. Well, thanks again to Greg Wyshysnki for joining us. I want us to go over our chocolate bar picks and everything, and maybe talk a little bit about what we talked about with him. But before we do, if you want to speaking of having some fun, there's a great way you can have fun on the BetMGM Sportsbook, besides just placing your bets, of course, because you can play the Swing for the Fences game now through September 7th. You log in, you just go to the MLB free game, and you pick a strike zone.
And you do it. You've done it.
I've done it like every day, and you just pick a strike zone, and then you either, hit a single, you can, you're out, whatever, but it's a game, and it's fun, and you get prizes. Like, what more can you possibly ask for? So check that out on BetMGM. If you haven't signed up yet, use the bonus code PHNX. There's a few different offers depending on where you live, but for our Arizona audience, you'll get up to $100 in bonus bets on your first wager with BetMGM. Again, make sure you use that bonus code PHNX. You can check out the show notes for full details, and now you can listen to Shane talk about the disclaimer.
Disclaimer, 21 plus to wager. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. U.S. promotional offers not available in Washington, D.C., Mississippi, Nevada, New York, and Ontario. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369, New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, Arizona. 1-800-522-4700, Kansas, Nevada. 1-800-327-5050, Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF, Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help, Michigan.
And Craig, there's actually, I think, a new sponsor since you've been gone. That's how long you've been gone. It's Saturday Neon, and this could be a great gift idea, especially for graduation. If you were late, if you forgot to give your dad a Father's Day gift, Saturday Neon. It's a company started by two friends that makes officially licensed collegiate logo LED neon signs. We have one in our office.
And that's the one Craig would put in his house, by the way.
The U of A
one? U
of
A Wildcat Neon A.
Yeah, absolutely. No? But they're just awesome. They look amazing, and they're just great for offices, man caves, dorm rooms, basements, bar areas, etc. So check it out. Go to SaturdayNeon.com and use code PHNX for 10% off your order today. Free shipping for orders over $200. All right, well, we want to go over our chocolate bar rankings. So if we can pull the graphic back up, Jacob. And I'm curious, everybody's.
I mean, Petey doesn't even know where his chocolate bars are made, so I'm just saying.
So, Craig, why don't you go first?
I'm gonna start.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go from the bottom. This one was I like Hershey's. Sorry, Coachella Valley. I'm still rooting for Coachella Valley in the AHL final, but dark and classic, I can't decide between those. I love dark chocolate, but what I do with the Hershey's Classic a lot, talk about breaking it up because they have those little rectangles that you can break it up into. I like to dip those right in a jar of peanut butter.
Ooh,
that's good stuff. Love the Three Musketeers. Has been a child favorite since childhood. Do you know Toblerone? I thought you would have known.
Yeah, I do know Toblerone.
Of course, it's the one in the hotel that's way too expensive in the minibar.
Yeah, it's great.
It's a
you can
minibar
break
candy.
those off as
yeah,
well.
Those are good. That's good.
Reese's Peanut Butter Cup, next level. But my all-time favorite is the 100 gram because it's almost like having a Rice Krispie treat inside a chocolate bar with the nougat. It's just perfect combination of flavors for me. So there it is.
Love it.
A big surprise, his top candy has to do with money. Bougie Craig. Fucking bougie.
Do you want to go next? Or do you want to
I'll just Kit Kat. We've talked about it enough. Yep. Hershey's Classic because you can't go wrong with a classic. Aero, light, airy milk chocolate goodness. And I know Craig said it's British, but it's also made in Canada. And it's every time I go to Canada, I stock up on my Aeros. Hershey's Cookies and Cream, absolutely elite white chocolate. You cannot go wrong with that sweetness of a good white chocolate. And number one, caramel, because it's two candies in one. It's melted caramel surrounded by milk chocolate goodness.
I like that we both have Canadian chocolates in our top 5. I had Reese's at 5. I know that's controversial. It was so low on the list, but I do love Reese's. Coffee Crisp, gotta represent in Canada. I mean, just elite. If you've never had it, try it. Aero, for all the reasons Petey said. Twix, this one is like a rising star for me. I wasn't a fan in childhood, but I love Twix. And then Kit Kat number 1. It's always the one I will grab. And contrary to what Greg said, I do believe it's better in Canada, and I was backed up by that in the chat. So thank you, chat, for that. But let us know what your top 5 chocolate bars are in the chat, in Discord, on Twitter. We'll probably tweet this out later. But just a fun conversation, and related to the fact that Coachella Valley is banning chocolate right now.
Game 7 tonight.
Yeah. So there's still hockey
story.
on. It's great.
First season. Can you imagine that?
It's like Vegas.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Years ago. It's really cool. So anything that Greg talked about today that you guys want to circle back around to? I thought it was interesting that he did admit that there is, extreme bias from Canadian media in terms of covering the Coyotes.
Yeah, from a national media's perspective.
Yeah.
I think that's, and it is good. And I think sometimes, we said it during the show, but we get in those bubbles of we look at it through a Coyotes lens, and it's good to see the national lens looking from the outside in at what they think. And he's a fan of this community. I know people on our chat somewhere said he's negative against us at Coyotes, and I don't think that's the case.
I think he's objective.
Objective, yeah.
I think he's objective.
And I think that's fair. So it's encouraging that he believes the league and the organization is trying. And that's good to hear from a national perspective.
Yeah. Any takeaways from you? Well, we do have a $5 super chat from our friend Alltex.
Oh, buddy.
Said, today is a great day. I'm definitely, in all caps, not sad about any recent waiver news whatsoever. Cue the clip of the Trotz guy saying F over and over.
Well, no, it just gives an opportunity.
Thoughts.
It gives him an opportunity to pick out a new favorite player. That's all. And a new sweater.
I think we should have a campaign this summer. Who should Alltech's new favorite player be?
That's a great idea.
That is a great idea.
Wait till the roster's finalized.
Yes.
We need to. Can we just talk about this for 1 second? Yeah. The tweet that Cap Friendly put out yesterday saying that the Coyotes only have, I think, 11 roster spots filled right now, but they have 12 draft picks, and everyone was like, "Oh, joke franchise, joke." It's like that's the time of the summer that we're in.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Ottawa only has that many too, and they only have 5 draft picks.
I'll bet you could have found examples of this like every season if you went to the summer.
Of course.
And it doesn't take into account all the contracts that they have in Tucson. And yeah, they just made it clear that they're trying to add some pieces. So why are we tweeting that right now?
What was the point of that tweet? What is the point of the tweet? That's all. What's the point?
It felt like a jab.
100% a dig.
Speaking of national bias, like that's what that felt like.
What was the point? Yeah, we have more draft picks than everybody. Good. Great. Suck on that. I don't get it. The hate.
Yeah, I don't understand that one either. That was weird.
Oh yeah.
I mean, listen, Cap Friendly does an invaluable service.
Amazing work.
Yeah, they do amazing work, but that was weird. That was weird.
It was
and misleading. So whatever.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna go ahead to our prospect spotlight and 10 days of Tootsies. Before we do that, there was a teeny tiny little Coyotes news yesterday afternoon. The Coyotes have signed Steven Kampfer to a 1-year, 2-way contract. I call it a tiny blip of news because he'll most likely be on the Tucson Roadrunners, but still notable, signing a defenseman after sending 2 through waivers yesterday.
Yeah, and they liked what he gave them. They liked what he gave Tucson. They needed some veteran presence there. They lost a defenseman, if you remember, who went back to Europe because of some personal issues.
Yeah.
So you need veteran presence on the blue line in the AHL to have success. They liked what he brought, so I just expect him to reprise the role. Could he get called up a couple times? Sure, if they have injuries, but this isn't about, they're bolstering the blue line for the Coyotes. He's a Tucson Roadrunner.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, for all those roster spots that do need to be filled, there'll be some new faces to the Valley, I'm sure, and I will make sure they are all set up in their new places here with more furniture. I just got my final 2 furniture deliveries last weekend. It was so effortless. I got the white glove delivery. I can't even tell you how it took like 10 minutes total. Everything was there. Like, they were so incredibly helpful. So if you want to save big on the best furniture in the Valley, head to morefurniture.com. That's morfurniture.com. PD and I are thrilled to be back in these comfy More Furniture chairs on this set here, because PD's back was starting to ache him.
Yeah, this is way better.
We needed the comfy chairs.
Way better. And again, it wasn't about the chair. It was about Craig. It's always, isn't everything? Doesn't it always circle back to it's about Craig? We get the nice chairs. Why? Oh, Craig's here.
Bougie Craig.
And Craig, you know what Craig's response to that?
You say that as if there's
Craig said
yeah.
Yep. In my
point?
contract. Yep.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. You should have heard our conversation about the Nashville Airbnb earlier, by the way. Speaking of Nashville, when we go, it's going to be hot. It's going to be sunny. So make sure you pack your Shady Rays.
It'll be humid.
Shady Rays. Could we bring on our boat tour? Shady
absolutely.
Rays?
Yeah.
Petey and I are thinking about mesh. We're going to wear mesh while we're in Nashville.
Good Lord. Mesh, but also Shady Rays.
Left him speechless.
I
Look at that.
I know, I'm just thinking of the boat with the Shady Rays.
Oh my God, your wife's in the chat.
What?
Just said yes.
Wait, all the way from Belfast, by the way.
Yes.
Just yes.
Yes.
Wait, is that a yes to mesh?
I think it was to my stuff
I
about
think it's about you being
bougie. The bougie Craig. And you own it so well.
You really do.
And we talk about Shady Rays, you literally should just wear them into the studio. Because
yes, you're kind of a big deal.
I do see, yeah. And we've talked about him being James Bond Vacation with the glasses. And he kind of has that Tom Cruise vibe too, right, Tara?
Now I'm expecting a no.
Never mind. Shady Rays.
Check out Shady Rays. I brought mine to New York last weekend. I right there in my car always, and I have a new pair on the way. I'm super excited. And right now, exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Go to shadyrays.com and use code PHNX for 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 250,000 people.
What did she say?
I know.
She said, "My prince."
Oh, God.
Dan said, "Nobody looked Craig in the eyes."
She's been drinking for sure. What's the time zone there?
Right?
She's been drinking.
She's in Ireland.
For sure she's
Irish
drinking.
ladies were approaching him.
Because he looked like a leprechaun.
All right, let's move on. Prospect spotlight of the day. Counting down to the draft. Trying to spotlight prospects. Watch us do every single, we're trying our best to cover as many names as possible, but watch, we're going to miss the one.
We're going to miss the guy.
Somehow. But this guy is very much listed in that 6 to 12 range, so I'm glad we're talking about him today. And it's Matthew Wood out of a University of Connecticut. He's a big guy, 6'3", 193 pounds, a left wing. And as Chris Peters says, big size, scoring ability, and he was the youngest player in college hockey this year and averaged close to a point per game. Opportunities, his skating's not great, according to Chris Peters, who we depend on for much of our draft insight.
ALLCITY correspondent.
Yeah, absolutely. But he had 34 points in 35 games this season with UConn. But he's actually a Canadian kid playing in the NCAA. So,
draw some comparisons to, because of his size and playing at UConn, to Tage Thompson. But they're
Careful
saying
there, buddy.
when you talk about
there.
Tage Thompson, the one thing that Matthew Wood, you talk about his size and his skill and his surprise that he had in his freshman year of college. The one thing that scouts look as a drawback for him because of his size is his skating ability might be his one drawback when you talk about Matthew Wood. They feel college is the right spot for him because he can work on his speed. You practice more, you're going to get better strength training at the NCAA level. So I think he's a guy that I think he might slip past 12. I mean, there are some, he was rated 4th in the last Central Scouting in North American skaters, but I think his skill level and his skating may push him just a little bit. He's still a first-round pick, and he's still highly touted because of his frame. And we talk about Bill Armstrong liking those big players. This may be a guy at 6'3", nearly 200 pounds, that's only going to put on more size with that offensive ability. It's somebody that Bill Armstrong and the Coyote staff definitely may look at.
Yeah, for sure. Chris Peters also said he thinks he'll be in that top 15 range. Could be the 6 to 12 range, but we'll see. But just overall, he's a good offensive talent. And obviously, he's not like Bedard and Fantilli, but a top 15 pick.
That's what we said
likely.
about these tiers of these drafts.
Yeah.
There's so many different tiers, and it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up in that 7 or 8, but he could drop to 17, 18, 19, 20. Like, there are so many questions about need and what you're looking for. If you're looking for a center, if you're looking for speed, if you're looking for skill, if you're looking for size. We saw what New Jersey did last year at the draft by picking a defenseman second. We didn't see that coming.
Right.
So you just have no idea. This kid's a high talented collegiate player that's projected to go in the first round, so you better know his name.
Absolutely. And you better know these Tootsie's tips from Petey, because
I saw the photo.
It's 10 days of Tootsies.
It's 10 days of Tootsies.
We need some backstory
what is it,
behind this
day
photo
8?
you're going to put up.
This is day 8. I've got the last 2 picked out. This is day 8. I went back to another person in a spotlight, a name that we come from the Coyotes past, and this is the corner booth. Again, in Tootsies with Coyotes legend Louis DeBrusk. That's Louis DeBrusk at the corner booth at Tootsies. And doesn't he look good? Like he's ready to play. That's back when he's the radio broadcaster under Bob Heathouse. He's now the voice of the Edmonton Oilers across Canada. And I wish I could grow hair like that.
Petey, we need to talk about this selfie.
Oh, just wait for the next 2 days of Tootsies.
Oh my God. This is like the most awkward selfie I've ever seen in my entire life.
But that's what a Tootsie selfie should look like,
Why
right?
You're not quite smiling, but you're not quite frowning.
That's late at Tootsies. It's just, I'm telling you, the corner booth, which we will not be able to sit in because we won't be able to afford it anymore. Back in those days, it was free. You just had to be there early, and so I made sure I was there early. So we'll see everybody at Tootsies in less than a week.
Literally,
thanks, Louis.
Literally earlier, like Petey was trying to tell Shane like the strategy to go to the bathroom.
Oh yeah, I was going to bring that up, but then I thought maybe not.
Well, because we brought up the bathroom every day this week.
You can't get to the bathroom. You can't get there. It's in the back corner through tables. It's a maze of humanity, and I'm not giving away my secret.
No.
I will give it away to the diehards
who come on our trip.
Who come on the trip.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will give you the strategy to going to the bathroom, and it does not involve going outside. Although it could be done too, and it probably has been.
It probably has been.
There is a strategy,
yeah, but
to bathroom at Tootsies. Can't wait. The closer this gets, the more excited I am, and I'm excited truly about the draft too, because I'm excited to see what direction the Coyotes go with their 2 picks. But I'm excited about all the opportunities we're going to have a little bit of fun.
I am too. I'm also excited because Craig's been putting out a story every single day this week at gophnx.com. Really. Making up for lost time there, but some great articles, so check them out.
Craig worked today.
Well, yeah, I want to make it clear to certain people in the chat that I am working very hard since I've been home from Europe.
Your wife said 2 Guinnesses down, 2 to go.
That's what I figured. 2 Guinnesses. Wow. Okay.
Oh man, but yeah, become a diehard. Yep, she did. Go.
Well, there we go.
Become a diehard. Go PHNX.com. Grab a free shirt from the locker when you sign up, or a hat, and 20% off merch, 20% off events, and access to our Discord chats as well. And while you're browsing your computer, head to foco.com. If you already ordered your Saturday neon sign, you're looking to get some more, sports memorabilia for your office or whatever it may be, check out Foco. They have your back for Arizona sports. Amazing stuff. A lot of the bobbleheads on our sets, especially in the other studio, are from Foco, and they just have awesome things. So whatever team you're a fan of, they have stuff, officially licensed gear as well. So get the best gear around by visiting foco.com and using code PHNX for all non-presale items. Use the code PHNX for 10% off. Craig, we might need to start open some Four Peaks to catch up with your wife here.
Seriously.
Good thing we have a fridge full of them here at the office, and I think we should also drink Four Peaks on our Friday show.
Yeah.
I think it's Friday Fun Day. I think we should break out the Four Peaks.
That sounds good to me.
So
do we have WoW in that refrigerator right now?
Saul said he was going to restock the fridge.
Beautiful.
So I'll have to double check if he did. But the best part about Four Peaks is you can buy it wherever you buy your beer. Literally anywhere you go, they sell it. You can also check out the Four Peaks 8th Street Pub. They have amazing food there as well. So check it out. And if you're a Teacher Tuesdays are back. So you can grab yourself a $4 pint of Kiltlifter, Wow, Hazy, and Hopknot if you bring your teacher ID to the 8th Street Pub. That's on Tuesdays. So just be sure to check out at Four Peaks Brew or at Four Peaks Pub to keep up with the latest Arizona's hometown brewery. You must be 21 or older to drink Four Peaks, and please drink responsibly. Anything else you guys want to talk about before we wrap up?
Looking forward to Bob McKenzie tomorrow.
Yes.
Wow. The legend.
The Bob Father.
Well, so we got to drink tomorrow, too.
We really should toast him because hopefully we'll bring a Bobby Margarita.
Last year he was on our show while we were at Four Peaks.
Yeah, but we can toast him because he'll have a Bobby Margarita for sure.
I hope so.
I hope so.
Yeah, I want to try one at some point soon.
And we can run some of these names by him and see if we're missing the mark.
Yeah, that's true. So Bob McKenzie's
that's 6 to 12.
His list comes out tomorrow, which is amazing because we'll get to talk to him tomorrow about the list. He always waits the longest. Like Craig has mentioned all week, he's super connected. So we're really looking forward to talking to Bob McKenzie. So be sure to block off an hour of your time, 11 a.m. tomorrow, and we'll talk with the Bob Father himself. Really looking forward to that. But everybody, thank you so much for being here in the chat. Be sure to hit the like button on your way out. If you're listening on audio, leave us a review. Thank you again to Greg Wyshysnki for joining us. Hope to, see him in Nashville and hopefully have him in our studio next year. Hopefully he'll make a trip out to Mullet again. We met him at the first game at Mullet as the national media descended to Arizona, and then that was it for the rest of the year, pretty much. But anyway, we appreciate everybody here, and you can follow us on Twitter at @SPetersHockey, at Liam Merrill, at Craig S. Morgan. You can follow Jacob's been behind the Mac today at Jacob Franklin, _Franklin 4. Yes, okay. I knew there was an underscore somewhere. And of course, you can follow the show at PHNX _Coyotes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the notification bell. Tomorrow live, 11 a.m. with Bob McKenzie. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow.